Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for the beautiful handover. That was fantastic, Phil. So good evening, everyone. Up front, I just wanted to thank you all for your time and for everything that you do to educate our future generations. It's a big job. It's a really important thing that everyone does, and in these difficult times, that is really quite a hard thing to do, especially as we're moving to new technologies and we're exploring and learning together on what are some of the good practice and best practices moving forward. As the senior program manager within the team's engineering team, I have the privilege of working with education customers across the region and ultimately working to empower every student to achieve more. While I am technical, my background is in fact education, and I've taught pretty extensively across K-12 and more significantly in higher education myself, spanning both Australian universities and also universities in Japan. I have also either taught with, learnt on, used, built code for, or integrated almost any LMS on the planet. As a matter of fact, my passion really is about saving teachers time, be they at university level, be they K-12 kindergarten teachers, because if we're able to save teachers time, if we're able to save academics time and to make their lives a little bit easier, they can carry on empowering students, which is really what they love to do. My contact details are listed on this slide. If you do have questions about Teams, if you do have questions about Teams and learning management systems, if you have questions about anything within this presentation, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm only too happy to work with you and your institution in any way that I possibly can. Next slide, please. That'd be great. You can probably click through until the 4 tiles appear. So what is Teams? Now, across this, this webinar, I'm sure that there's different levels of experience in utilizing Teams, particularly with the COVID response. But I like to refer to Teams in kind of 2 different ways. The first way is as a hub, which brings together all of the applications, tools, files, chats, calls, meetings into a single platform or a single place. These can, interestingly enough, be aligned to different personas or even individuals within an organization. So for example, an academics experience, say an engineering academics experience within Teams, and the applications or the combinations of applications that support the delivery of learning and teaching in their speciality can be unique to them, which could in turn be different to an IT pro or a student or a researcher at the very same university. And we can control and work with the university on defining these applications and permissions. And it's a really different experience from other platforms because it is quite a personalized experience. This, of course, extends beyond Microsoft applications and even our third-party partners and providers. Through the Teams platform, a university can in fact bring in all sorts of line of business applications. And we're really seeing an influx of demand and requests for assistance in bringing some of these LOB or line of business applications into Teams. So you can think of things like HR, your leave applications and approval workflows, finance services, student support, student welfare, library systems, CRM systems, all of these various approval workflows that exist within a university that otherwise chew up time. So what we want to do within Teams is look for ways that we can surface these tools, workflows, forms inside of Teams to save, again, teachers and students and professional workers time, to prevent context switching and just to make the lives a little bit easier so that they can focus on learning and teaching and research. In summary, this slide shows that Teams is a powerful communication platform, but if there's one thing to take away from what we've learned in COVID, it's not just about calling and meetings. There's much more to Teams and as a tool for augmenting learning and teaching than just live meetings. It really is a meta operating system. It is another way that we refer to it in engineering that empowers every student, teacher, and professional worker to really achieve more. A final footnote that I thought was interesting and quite timely, during Build, which is one of our major developer conferences, which just occurred last week, Satya and some of the others within our engineering leadership commented on the future of Microsoft Teams. And one thing that really stood out for me personally during their keynotes was their belief in how Teams will become more pervasive than even Windows especially over time. And the reason for this is that it's operating system agnostic and therefore can really reach every user on the planet in a way that hasn't been possible before. So this is really critical to us as a company to empower every person and every student on the planet to achieve more with technology. This absolutely begins with education, and we're entirely committed to making Teams the best possible product for collaboration and learning communities within education itself. If you flick through to the next slide, this is where you've bounced through a couple of slides, but that's okay. The second way to look at Teams for me personally is probably resonates a little bit better. And really, Teams is a hub that connects everybody across the university. And the really important word there is that everybody is able to connect. There are many communities of learning, communities of practice across a university campus and campuses, be they a virtual university or be they a physical presence. And we want to try to bring those together in a single platform. Right now, many users would be using social media to achieve similar outcomes. Teams can provide them a safe and secure place to do those communications and to collaborate and work with one another. A good example, research communities. Something I have personal experience in doing high degree research. It's really easy to bring researchers together using Teams within a single team to work and collaborate on a document together, even when they're not part of the same university. So you have a single team brainstorming, working together on research output. This greatly expedites the delivery of research output. It helps with coherency. It also helps with data and ownership of that data and IP as you're co-presenting and co-publishing. Another example is exchange students. Having been a former exchange student myself, this would have greatly benefited me when I was isolated many years ago. You can imagine having exchange students today as a community inside of Teams or a team inside of Teams where they're safe and they are able to share their experiences. They're able to get the support that they need in real time. And beyond that, they're able to look at and utilize integrations with other systems across the university. Think of the library, or think about student services or finance services, housing services, all of those forms and applications and workflows that for them, they would have to bounce to various systems to achieve the same outcome. By simplifying those workflows in Teams, you're bringing together this community. But more importantly, I think today, just cognizant of time, we want to double click on learning and teaching, which leads us to the next slide, please. So why should you think about Teams in learning and teaching, even in a post-COVID world? This is something that's top of mind for many universities. This is the conversation I have daily. At depth, we workshop this and we talk about how augmenting learning and teaching in a digital space such as Teams can really improve student outcomes. But to give you some concrete examples and reasons behind this, Teams really is the only place where you can safely create a community of learners at scale and still use all the tools, resources, and delivery approaches that you love and need as the educator. So for me, as the educator, I get to pick and choose how I deliver my outcomes. But I know that my students are safe, and I know that if I have 5,000 people in a course, I can scale that. And really, that's the magic of Teams. Beyond that, Teams prevents the context switching, and this is something I talk about a lot, and talk about cognitive overload a lot, and talk about non-English speaking background students in Australian universities who are constantly negotiating different systems to achieve outcomes. So what we're trying to do is bring those efficiencies in. So another really good example, Teams can provide a single place to ask and answer questions from students from any device, from anywhere in the world, at any time. Now, that means from a teaching perspective, and having experienced this myself, no more needing to answer the same question multiple times in multiple places to multiple stakeholders. Really, it's in a single place. Everyone gets visibility over that. We may not like the answers, but we can have a discussion around those answers. And some of you may have even seen the Qbot, which was implemented famously by Professor Kellerman at the University of New South Wales. The QBot takes this idea of answering questions to the whole next level. If you haven't seen Professor Kellerman's QBot, please feel free to check that out on YouTube and some of our other platforms. It's a really fascinating journey through how you can go from answering questions for students using a bot, storing that data and storing those Q&A pairs, and then making sure that that's surfaced for the students in the time that's meaningful for them. Really, really useful use case. For me, the way that I describe teams and the way that I describe the use of teams is a single place where groups of diverse individuals can swarm to solve problems or complete really complicated tasks. And let's be honest, at university, that's what we want our students to be doing, is work together as a diverse group of individuals to solve problems and to learn how to solve problems and to fail at doing that in a safe place. And again, being able to do that at scale, securely, with all the governance and controls that a university needs in place. So at Microsoft, that's what we do every single day, all day long, and that's exactly how we use Teams. As we move more and more to remote work, and I work 100% remotely, all of my peers do so as well. Many of our peer companies have their workers working remotely. It's just a normal part of daily operations now. And as we work to more and more matrixed workplaces, Teams will continue to become the single tool that brings everyone and everything together. That's our vision from a Teams engineering perspective. That's not just at Microsoft, that's all up in industry. So by using Teams for learning and teaching and to getting students to really swarm together to solve problems, to do group assignments, to prepare academic papers, etc., you're preparing them for success at work. That's fundamentally what you are doing, because it's that continuation of the use of the same tools. I won't go too much into meetings. If you're interested in how rich the meeting experience is and some of our feature enhancements, our roadmap, please do look at our blogs, our build recordings, some of our feature announcements that have been released recently. We're investing really heavily in rich meetings, specifically around student success and student safety. So they're really two of our top priorities. I would need probably 2 or 3 hours to run through meetings alone. The final point I want to make about this slide, and this is one of my personal soapboxes, and most certainly the most critical point in the entire pitch, the entire deck, is that Teams is built for accessibility. It's not a feature of Teams, it is built for accessibility. And as someone myself who is personally of low vision, I can attest to how game-changing Teams has been for me personally, especially on my worst days. So within your universities, 1 in 5 students will have some form of physical, learning, or other disability. So accessibility isn't an option anymore. It isn't a feature that you think about after the fact. It's far more than a responsibility. It is simply a no-brainer. So Teams not only excels in accessibility, it really is accessibility out of the box. It's what it does. Next slide, please. Thank you. So if you think back to the previous slide, we looked at some of the reasons why teachers love Teams. It gives them a place to swarm. It gives their students an opportunity to really build things together. To reiterate, Teams provides that single safe platform for communities of learning, communities of practice, to meet, swarm, solve problems across diverse groups of individuals. I can't emphasize enough again how critical those skills are for the future of work. Being able to work with diverse individuals, being able to work across languages, being able to work with people of different abilities and different skill sets and different specialities is really where the future is. While we can teach our students to be successful in whatever their chosen expertise area is, and we can give them the baseline knowledge of how to be an engineer and teach them mathematics, the skills that they need when they come into the workplace are about collaboration. How do you take what's in your brain and share it with other people? And when we're hiring for people at Microsoft, really that's what we focus on above all else. However, we do acknowledge that the learning management system at a university still plays a really important role. I come from learning management systems, it's in my blood. I understand how valuable they are for learning and teaching. The LMS does a really good job of structuring content. So when we're looking at Teams versus a learning management system, really that's the major differentiator. So if you're looking about sequencing ideas and resources, managing summative assessments and grade books and grading, or even as a pseudo source of truth for enrollment data, which for some universities is really important. We understand this at Microsoft, and the opportunity isn't about us versus them. Really, it's about how we go about bringing both of these platforms together to really get the most out of our students and to provide the most for our students. So if you move to the next slide, there's three different types or three different levels of adoption of Teams that we're seeing at universities. That's not to say that everyone will fit within each of these pigeonholes. It's just generally what we see. So first thing, you'll see there's three diagrams. The one on the left is really about those universities who plan on retaining a learning management system for content, and then they have Teams as a separate tool. They plan on retaining Teams purely for research, so letting their professional workers and their researchers work together, but they don't really intend on having Teams as a learning tool, and that's totally fine. We're here to support that as well. The second one is really where I'll spend most of my time today, and that's looking at how, in this scenario, Teams becomes a hub for experiences across communication and collaboration, which we just spoke about, and the place where students and faculty go to get stuff done. Now, Teams is built to get stuff done. Internally at Microsoft, we set up projects, we power through things. It's about efficiency and getting the most out of people. While the LMS in this scenario, in this middle column, is really about storing that content, the assignment workflows, and it's the preferred entry point for things like summative tasks where the final grade needs to sit in a source of truth of sorts. So in this scenario, we'll see a bit of a combination of end users going in through Teams, ideally, because all of their other systems and tools of choice sit within Teams as well. But we're not preventing people from accessing a learning management system directly either. You know, at this point, we're looking at things like automating the creation of Teams based on enrollments within a course in a learning management system, synchronizing that, pushing and pulling data between the two different systems to make the experience for users as seamless as we possibly can. The third diagram is where, through the use of Teams, really it becomes the one-stop shop for classroom collaboration, professional learning, and going to that second slide that I showed, it is the one place where everybody across an organization collaborates. Assignments are submitted through Teams, data is pushed back to student information systems. Student information systems are populating Teams dynamically, and this is the world where, because their university may be heavily invested in Office 365, this is just the best practice for them. We're not for or against any one of these three. We want to support universities across all three options. So if we move to the next slide. And this is a bit of a GIF, which is animating, which I'm very happy to see. We are investing in working really, really closely with learning management system vendors. And in light of my good friend Miles from Canvas presenting next, I thought I would spend a few moments describing Teams meetings within Canvas. So Canvas Learning Management System does a fantastic job in so many areas of learning and teaching. But one area where Teams really shines is in rich meetings. And nowhere was this more important than during the COVID-19 response and those virtual classrooms and needing to get students into live meetings in a safe and secure manner and using the most out of the Office 365 licensing that was available to universities already. So this GIF really simply lays it out how it works. An academic can, from within the calendar, essentially create a meeting link to a Microsoft Teams meeting and make that available to their students to jump in and initiate that meeting. Very, very simple. If we move to the next slide, Same thing, still looking at Canvas. In this case, instead of using the calendar, you're actually able to launch or create a meeting link for anywhere inside of the Canvas user interface. So anywhere where you see the rich content editor, and Miles will correct me if I'm using the incorrect nomenclature. The idea here is that while you're in the middle of describing content or you're working with students around something in a module, you should be able to launch a meeting as well. So it's about providing flexibility for learning and teaching. The next slide. Now, we understand that many organizations across APAC use Moodle. Fun fact, I spent the best part of my career writing code for Moodle plugins and modules and themes, more specifically. I'm not going to lie, I really do have a soft spot for Moodle, as they are fundamentally an Australian company, and I also find their passionate community of educators really inspiring. I've had a lot to do with the Moodle community, and I really do genuinely love Moodle. We have also worked closely with Schooler. Now, Schooler is a Microsoft partner to bring a really deep integration with Teams and Moodle. In this scenario, again, going to that slide which has the 3 different modes or 3 different levels of adoption of Teams, this is firmly in the middle. And here, through Schooler, we're presenting all of your content from your Moodle course directly inside of the Teams interface. This isn't some trickery, this isn't some magic which is going to pop you out into a browser window to complete an activity. This is a native Moodle experience directly inside of the Teams interface. The idea being that you should be able to have those conversations within Teams. You should be able to launch meetings within Teams, but you should also be able to access all of the content and the sequencing, the topics and the weeks directly within Teams as well. Now, Schooler has a couple of different components to it. It has the skin or the tab interface for learning and teaching. It also has a really rich admin interface. So for those within the organization that are responsible for the governance and the maintenance and looking after Teams and Moodle, this makes it really easy for them to do that. So the next slide, just bouncing back to Canvas again, is looking at Go1. So Go1 is one of my favorite integrations with Teams because it does a really good job of bringing content into the Teams interface. So while, yes, we do collaboration and chat and we do all of these things with apps and platform, having that sequencing of content easily accessible to the teacher and to the students is really well done with Teams and Go1. So if you have Canvas and you have Go1, you're able to bring in either individual resources or your entire module structure directly into Teams as well. Again, this is all single sign-on. We're not expecting users to log in multiple times. We're not bouncing between multiple systems. It's about creating efficiency and a really rich experience across every device. Go1 also has, as part of their freemium model, hundreds and thousands of resources that are curriculum aligned and aligned to various specialities. So for example, if I'm teaching mechanical engineering, then, you know, as I'm building out my team and I've got my Canvas content and my Canvas modules, I can also attach resources directly from the Go1 library as well. So that's their platform. It's a really, really good integration with Canvas. Now, the next slide, just really, really cognizant of time. I'm going to bounce through really quickly. Content team, we're going to go through some slides quick. To best showcase how all this fits together, I just wanted to give you a working scenario of how we can use Teams for learning and teaching to really drive 21st century skills and work-ready skills. To give the context for this scenario, we have a group assignment. Probably a higher order group assignment. We're looking at later years, year 3, year 4, university students, potentially MBA students. Those students have gone out, they've done a bunch of field research, they've collected data, and we're getting towards the latter part of the assignment where they've been asked by the academics to prepare for publication, in essence, or to submit their assignment. So if we bounce to the next slide, a couple of options the academic could have taken. They could have provided the students with a separate team. They have ultimate control over that team. They can structure it however they want, or using the group activities app, which is a Teams open source app that you can implement. They can split their team into multiple private channels, which gives the students their own private space to collaborate in their groups. It will do all of the splitting of the users dynamically for the academic. The next slide. is really simple. So we're working through as a team. Now, the first action, our point of call, was to create a meeting. Now, this is a process many of you will be familiar with because we've done it hundreds, if not thousands of times during COVID, to schedule a meeting with your peers. Because the students in this team have access to the calendar of their peers, they're able to schedule that meeting like they would in the workplace. They know when people are available, super easy to launch that meeting. The next slide is simply walking through the Teams meeting interface and how you can schedule things, how you can attach different tools during a live meeting as well. The next slide, so bouncing really quick, keeping you on your toes, is after the meeting, there's a whole bunch of actions that came out of that, a whole bunch of requirements that needed to be gathered by the group to prepare and finalize their final report and submission. The best way to do that is in Planner. Now, Planner is built for Teams. The idea is that Planner, which is an Office 365 app, if you're unfamiliar with it, it's essentially a lightweight, agile project management tool. You can set up a Scrum board, you can assign tasks to different people, and that's what the project leader has done. Again, a really relevant work-ready skill, but also helping to drive outcomes in this project. The next slide is looking at how the conversation evolves and how the tools evolve as well. So as they're preparing for a final submission, the team is discussing different needs and different things like finance and budget. So in the next slide, we bring in Excel. Now, Excel has a native integration with Teams, of course. The fact is I can create an Excel file, I can share that file in a tab inside of Teams, and then I can go above and beyond and even collaborate in real time on that Excel inside of Teams without leaving Teams. But of course, if you're a power user of Excel, you're probably wanting a few additional features. You can open that same file up directly inside of Excel, the app, the thick app, and use all of your full-featured suite. Yeah, this is all stored in SharePoint. So the risk of losing files or people sharing things inappropriately or cheating, all of that is minimized quite dramatically, just because it's safe and secure inside of the team. Now, if we bounce through 2 slides, so we'll skip the next slide and we'll go to the next one. The students have been asked to prepare a visual presentation as well as part of this topic. Now, they've got lots of data, and the best way to visualize data inside of Office 365 is clearly through Power BI. Now, Power BI, again, can work inside of Teams. If you're working on a research project together, you can imagine having live data feeding into that research project. It's not stale data, it's constantly changing, and these dashboards are live. And then I'm going to skip through and say that the students can, so if we skip through a couple of slides, can prepare a final report in Microsoft Word as you would expect. They can submit that either directly through Teams, or they can submit that directly through their learning management system to get the final marks and grades, etc. The one last slide I wanted to leave on is the next slide, which is class insights. Now, for those of us that have ever had to mark a complicated group assignment and differentiate marking to different students based on their performance and participation in those things, class insights is a savior. The idea here is that I can see in quite a great deal of definition who has said what, when they've said it, how they've contributed, what they've participated in, which channels they've worked within inside of the team, how frequently they're accessing things. And from there, I can actually make a fairly good estimation of their performance as a team member for that group assignment. And with that, I believe I am completely out of time.